style, sell with Sue. It's your move.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to No Place Like Home. And today on this episode, I have the wonderful guest, Todd Hirsch, who is very well known in Calgary for his economic perspective. He has spoken probably to every association and group you can find, not only in Calgary, but all across Canada. He has authored 4 books. He has changed people's lives when it comes to adapting to economic change. And I guess that's a topic that never goes out of style. Hey, Todd?
Absolutely not. People are always experiencing change. And thank you for those kind words, by the way. But yeah, people, I mean, to be alive means you are going to experience change. And that's what I like talking about.
Well, I think I met you when I spoke at a Rotary meeting, and that was a change because it was a last minute. I think they were short a speaker, and somebody I knew asked me to come, and so I often share about Tabasco in business, and you were there, and you spoke on. Now, if you're on video, you can see his book, Spiders in Space, as it's coming through there. You spoke about economics and this book you had written, Spiders in Space. Please share for our audience about that work that you did.
Yeah, well, the title Spiders in Space is meant to be a bit curious and provocative and get people interested in what it's all about. And the title draws from an experiment, actually a series of experiments that NASA has been conducting on with spiders in zero gravity. Because we all know how spiders build their webs on Earth. They lower themselves down on their threads and they use gravity and their body weight to build tension in their threads. And the NASA scientists were interested and curious just what would spiders do without gravity? So in 1974, in 2008, and in 2011, they've been conducting a series of experiments, and I think there's still some ongoing. And what happens, the most remarkable set of experiments in 2011, the spider that they had brought up, they actually named her Esmeralda. She crawled out of her container and she attempted to do what all spiders do when they're hungry, and that is build a web. But it was not working out for her. She was drifting around and she had no gravity, and her threads or her web was not coming together as she normally would expect it to. And for a moment, she was a bit lethargic. She had kind of crawled up into the corner of her container, and the astronauts weren't certain if this was going to work out. But then very soon after that, Esmeralda got busy. She taught herself whole new techniques of web building. She was able to push herself off the edge of the container and build tension in her web that way, in a way that she had never had to do before. And she constructed a totally new design of web in zero gravity. And when I heard that story, I was so inspired because, you know, the spiders didn't have 10 million years of evolution to figure out how to, how to live and how to build webs in this brand new environment. She was suddenly thrust into a totally new world with no gravity, but she figured it out. So inspired by that story, I have a co-author on the book. My co-author, Rob Roach, and I, we delved into the human experience. We did a series of interviews with human spiders, we call them. These were Canadian businesses, individuals. We have some Winter Olympians in there, some Summer Olympians, all of which faced a similar story, and that is very abruptly, everything in their business, in their life changed in an instant, sometimes over a phone call. And we were curious, what were the traits of these successful adapters? Were we able to distill a list of characteristics that are essential for humans if we are going to adapt to very sudden and abrupt change? So that's what the book is all about. It's profiles of these successful adapters, and then the list of traits that we were able to distill down.
I love your use of stories and real life examples. It's kind of like you don't have to make this stuff up. It
Right.
exists out there.
It
Yeah, thank you
exists.
for putting it in a book.
Nature is a
So,
great teacher.
yes. So as the expert on adaptability, I could you offer, what do you think are your top three traits that people could think about when they're stuck in a
Yeah.
situation they need to adapt to?
Well, the list of traits that we have, awkwardly, we came up with a list of 11. We didn't quite have 12, and we had more than 10. So our list goes to 11. And yes, there is a Spinal Tap reference in there for people of a certain vintage like me who would remember that Rob Reiner movie. Anyway, the number one trait I like to talk about is know who you are, know your story. The
Mm.
spider knew that it is a trapper, and it traps its food, it traps its prey. In zero gravity, that story doesn't change for the spider. The spider just had to figure out, how do I live out my story as a web builder, as a trapper, in a totally different environment. So, as human beings, when we experience sudden unwanted change, it helps if we, before the change happens, it helps if we know who we are as a business, know who we are as a human being, know who we are as an athlete, whatever the case might be. If you don't have your story straight, when that sudden change happens, you're going to be flailing. You're going to be a bit lost and confused. So, know your story is always the first thing that I like to talk about. The next one that I like to talk about is give yourself a bit of breathing room. Even the spider, it was part of the story of the NASA research. The spider, after it was attempting to build its regular webs, it was a bit lethargic and a bit dormant for a while. It didn't instantly was able to make all those changes. It was a bit dormant for a little while. And I think when we are hit with sudden change, it's okay to give ourselves a bit of grace, to pause for a bit, to maybe grieve what was
Mm.
lost before we embark on something new. Now, it's important that you move out of that grief and pause, but give yourself some grace as you are figuring it out.
Yeah, that's so good. And so here you can take these truths in any direction.
Yeah,
And even when I'm thinking of home, if we bring it to home, know what you want to create in your home. Know
absolutely.
what you want it to feel like, to be like. And I think we see that in sports too. You're talking about that breathing room. Sometimes when you get knocked down, you just need to take a knee.
And give yourself that grace and give yourself some pause, to make sure that you know who you are, that you have your story straight before you instantly try to embark on something new.
Yes. And would you have a third one you wanted to mention? Or,
A third one, I guess the third one would maybe be rely on the expertise of people who went before you, and this is where mentorship I think is really important. Ask people who have experienced the kind of thing that you've gone through, because it comes down to, you need to know when do you focus and when do you flex. Both of those things are really important as humans. We're always told to, focus on your goals. You want to be laser, really zeroed in on what it is, your personal goals, your business goals. And that is important. But at the same time, we also have to understand, when is it important to flex? When is it important to bend with the changing conditions? And those two things seem like contradictory pieces of advice. On one hand, laser focused. On the other hand, sort of bend with changing conditions. So there's some tension there between those two. And the only way we can figure out, when do we focus on our goal and when do we flex and say, maybe I need to compromise a bit, is relying on the expertise of those who went before us. This is
hmm,
where wisdom and discernment come into it, because there is no manual for life. There's no manual even in business for when do you focus and when do you flex. So depend
yeah.
on the wisdom and insights of those who maybe have experience with this.
Well, that's so interesting. I hope everyone listening, you'll be inspired to go out and buy that book, Spiders in Space, because there's more lessons, and we're not going to talk about them the whole time, but I couldn't resist, Todd, because they're just so insightful. And when when we're talking about economics, what really struck me, one thing you said to me was, well, the word economics means home.
Yeah.
Can you share that, what we were talking about?
Yeah. Well, the root word economics, its root is in the Greek word eikos. And some people might know that you can go to the grocery store and buy a brand of yogurt called Ecos, but Ecos in Greek means home. So economics, and when we think about economics, most of the indicators that people are really concerned about have to do with their home life. It has to do with, can I afford to live? Can I afford to buy groceries to put in my home? Do I have a job to support my home? These are the kinds of things that's all very close to home. Economists like me and others, we can get really, kind of wound up with these big concepts like labor market mobility and labor productivity and trade data and stock markets and all those other things that exist sort of on the periphery of the economy. And they're important too. But when it comes right down to individual people like you and I, what most people are most concerned about is very close to their home. It's their family, it's their partners, it's their domestic situation. So I guess it's fitting that the root word of economics, if you go back to the Greek, is home, ecos.
I love that. At the core of our
At the core.
economics is our home.
Yeah.
How are you feeling at home? How are you doing at home? Because we're going through a lot of changes right now. We're seeing a lot of concern. And of course, we need to adapt. But I mean, adaptability and change and economics, they've always been around. And our homes maybe have reflected that in some ways and special ways for each of us, I'm sure. If you think back, I mean, what was your childlike home like? What was growing up for you as a kid like? What did you like about home, or what did you notice maybe was missing now that you have the maturity to look back on it?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a solidly middle class, working class household in central Alberta. My father was always with Canada Safeway, and he got moved around from store to store. So we moved around a lot as kids. But I do remember in 1974, I was 8 years old, so people can do the math and calculate my age. But in 1974, our family moved to Camrose, Alberta, and my father had just received a major promotion. He was now the manager of a Safeway store in Camrose. And as a result, we were able to afford to, it was the first home that my parents were able to actually purchase. I
Hmm.
think we had been in rental homes before then. But this home we purchased in Camrose, and we had moved from Edmonton to Camrose. So even a smaller city, homes were more affordable. This home, I thought, to go back and look at it now, it's a very modest home, but it had, at the time, it was a popular design in homes. It had a sunk in living room. And I thought we had hit the jackpot. I
Oh,
thought,
yes.
this is it. Like, we have arrived. You have to walk down two, shag carpet stairs to get into this sunken living room. And it just seemed very exciting and glamorous. That was the one thing I do remember about that house that we moved into in Camrose, that sunken living room. Yeah.
That's so awesome. As parents moving, when we have a family and the children, we don't know how that's going to affect them. We don't know what memories you are going to take. I'm sure your parents weren't thinking, oh, good, a sunken living room. Todd's really going to enjoy that and enjoy that memory as he gets older.
Well, I do remember it's hard to kind of unravel this, but I do remember my mom talking about, this sunken living room. So maybe that was part of my impression, because I had no idea what a sunken living room was until, my mom was excited about this. And the other thing about that house, going back and looking at it now, in fact, I was just with my mother the other day, and we were driving, we had to go to Camrose for something, and we drove past that house, and boy, does it ever look small
Oh,
today. In
yes.
1974, when I'm 8 years old, it looked like a big house, but it also was exciting because it had a bath and a half Like this was crazy, and there were five of us in our house, and we
Yes.
only ever had one bathroom. But now we had an extra
Wow.
little, we call today a powder room, just a toilet and a sink. But
Yeah.
boy, did that ever seem like luxury
The
at the time.
things we used to like, yes. But, and I mean, home, it's about the memories that we take with us, right? Like the
Absolutely.
good feelings, the good vibes, the special moments in our homes.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think back on that home and other homes that we've had too, the physical environment in that home and the memories that were created in that home. Now, obviously, a lot of that has to do with your parents or your family or brothers and sisters or a single parent, whatever it's going to be. Those are the most important relationships, but they all take place in the confines of a physical space.
Yeah, that's right. And you were telling me something funny or significant about your sister.
Oh, my sister. Well, my sister's 5 years older than me. So I do remember in the same house in Camrose with the sunken living room. When she turned 15, she started junior high school. And they had a library of records that you could sign out and bring home. And we did not
Oh.
have a lot of, we had mostly, sort of religious and gospel music in our home. But my sister, when she went to junior high and she could sign out these records, she started bringing home Fleetwood Mac and the Bee Gees, ABBA, and April Wine. And wow, I mean, I would sneak into her bedroom. I hope she never listens to this podcast. She'd have a good laugh at it
You'll
today.
know now.
I would sneak into her room where she had this little tiny kind of record player, and I would, listen to those records. And this was dangerous. If I got caught in her room listening to, using her record player, I'd be in a lot of trouble. But wow, did that ever open up a whole new idea of what music was like? I can still
Yes.
remember sort of setting the needle down on Fleetwood Mac Rumors, and the first few bars of Dreams come in, and a lot of, and if you're too young to remember it, just go Google Dreams Fleetwood Mac 1976. You'll know the song anyway. But that is a very powerful memory. And I know exactly where I was. I was in her
Yes.
room, which was beside my room, in that little house in
Yes.
Camrose. Yeah.
What a great memory. I so appreciate you sharing that. And on a earlier episode, I interviewed this local Calgarian, Jennifer Buchanan, who also is the owner of JB Music Therapies.
Yeah.
And she
Good friend of
uses
mine.
music. Yes, you know her, and just the importance of just a little thing
Right.
like listening to a song at a certain point in our lives and how it carries forward those moments and those memory makers.
Absolutely. There's so much science around how the brain works when it's listening to music.
Mm.
Even things like when you sing in a choir with other people, everyone's brain waves start to sync up. It's crazy what neuroscientists are able to discover about music and how powerful it is on the brain. And that's what, Jennifer, she does a lot of work with Alzheimer's patients and, people who, the doctors say they don't communicate until you bring music into the equation, and everything in that brain starts to change.
Yeah, good point. If anyone has ever sung in a church choir or a school
Yeah.
choir, recently I joined Sweet Adeline's choir, Rhythm of the Rockies here. They're an award-winning choir. We just won first place last year.
Wow.
And I was astonished. I haven't been in a chorus or anything for many years, but I was astonished how close I felt to all of these women.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine said, when you sing together, Todd, exactly what you were
Yeah.
saying, how your brains come together. So
Yeah.
there's
It's
so much
science.
we just do it naturally and we don't understand the science, but the science backs it up.
And if Jennifer were here, I mean, she is the expert. She points out in her keynotes that I've listened to, every culture in every time period around the world has had music. That has always been something.
Mm,
Now it's different across the cultures, but every culture has music. There is something innate in the human experience around music that brings us together, that bonds us.
Yeah, it's a great tool to use. So if you're changing homes, giving the opportunity to, I don't know, play a celebration song, play music while you're unpacking, play music of a certain kind that the family likes, the kids like, it just opens up a whole window
Yeah.
to creating good vibes. Now, I know lots of times I'm focusing on what are the good vibes and the good memories we can create in home, but there's also the other side of the coin. There are things and challenges that come up, unexpected
Mm.
things that happen. People invest their money and sometimes it doesn't always work out how they want. And I wonder if you might have anything to share around that.
Yeah, it's so important, especially for, home buyers or people looking maybe their first home or maybe to expand into a bigger home to accommodate a growing family. I would dare say there's always going to be something about a home, as much as you love it, that either drives you crazy or maybe in an unexpected way is creating some unexpected financial strain.
Mhm.
Good friends of mine years ago, this would have been in the 90s, they bought sort of a mid-century post-war home in a mature neighborhood here in Calgary, and they loved it. They loved the neighborhood, everything about a mature neighborhood with the trees and this cute post-war home. It was probably about a 1950 home, and they loved it and moved in, had all the inspections done on it, but less than a year into moving in, they discovered to their horror that the roof had completely rotted out and they needed to replace it. And this was going to be a major, unexpected financial hit on them. And, it was really devastating for them, because it really set them back in terms of their other financial goals. But, I guess it's a lesson that no matter what we do, I mean, someone could argue maybe, you needed to have an older home, a more mature home, maybe do a bit more inspection on it. I don't know. But there's
Mhm.
always going to be something about a
Yeah.
home that is going to be maybe in some ways a disappointment. Where my partner and I live, we love our home, except the kitchen's too small. That's the thing that's always driven me crazy about the place we live. But there's always going to be something. And I think that is just, again, part of the human experience of living in a home.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just thinking as you're telling that story, it doesn't matter what it is we should expect the challenges.
Yeah.
But even in that example, I could take your adaptability lessons. Uh-oh, something happened to their roof. Well, who are they? Like, is this the home for them? Are they the kind of people that can get through a challenge? Okay, maybe they need to take some breathing room and discern what needs to happen here. Maybe they need to bring an expert in
Yeah.
and really have an expert opinion of what best to do now. Do you make the home your own? You're both feet in and live in it for a long time, or do you abandon the project?
Yeah. And again, I mean, sort of going back to my traits of successful adapters, when do you focus and when do you flex? When do you say, this is the house for us? And no matter what, we're going to repair this roof. We're going to borrow the money, whatever we need to do. Or do you say, maybe this was not the best move and maybe we need to move and look at a different home? Always difficult to say, but that's the wisdom and discernment that we all need.
Yes. And you have to build that by going through the challenges yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we learn, we gain experience. And again, going back to another one of the traits, have a mentor, have people who have been through this before that you can go back and ask, what would you do?
Yes. And hopefully that's what we as realtors are able to help our
Yeah,
clients with, maybe have this, maybe have that, because a lot of people they're so afraid to make a mistake.
yeah,
They're so afraid that something will happen. And sometimes a home inspector, yes, they will reveal a good handful of things that aren't perfect in a home. And we have to be careful not to be discouraged, but rise up to the challenge. Okay, well, these are the things that need to be addressed because anything can be fixed.
yeah.
It's just, how much money. But it does keep a lot of people afraid to make a decision sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Everything can be fixed, but there's a cost to doing that. Either a financial cost or what economists, here I'll put my economist hat back on, there can be what economists call an opportunity cost. What are you giving up in terms of a choice you're making? What option are you now losing? So I talked a little earlier about our kitchen is too small. There is a way we could enlarge the kitchen, but then we lose the dining area. So the opportunity cost, I mean, yeah, there'd be some financial cost to this too, but my big hesitation is we've got this nice oak table where we love entertaining, and you can sit 12 people around that table. If we were to enlarge our kitchen, you could do it, but we would lose that dining space. We
Mm,
could, at best have a nice big island where people could sit around and we could entertain, but we would lose the table and sort of that dining, sitting around a table experience. And I don't want to give that up. It's
yeah.
always sort of driven me crazy that we either have to have a small kitchen and a nice space for this dining room, or one big functional kitchen, but nowhere to sit.
Well, we put up with those things like back in the day when we only used to have 1.5 bathrooms for 5 people.
Yeah.
Maybe in a way too, we see beautiful show homes or we think we should have things a certain way, but really we can decide to be content and make use of things how they are to the best of our ability, right?
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, I mean, space, lots of people like a big home, and, people will have different preferences around that. But, there's a saying, big homes are built for dysfunctional people or dysfunctional families. You
Yeah.
can, in a way, have too much space to the point that you're
Yes.
not even interacting as a family
Yeah.
anymore. And I don't want to discourage people who, like a nice big home, maybe for entertaining, or they have grandkids that come and stay. That's great. But I would always ask people, why do you need such a big home for 3 people?
Totally. Yes. We have a lot of that. It's a good question for people to ask too. I
Yeah,
know I notice sometimes when I walk around the beautiful luxury homes in our neighborhood with beautiful backyards, sometimes I wonder, where's the family playing in
yeah,
the backyard? You've got a beautiful space here, and yet, you go down to some of the smaller houses and the kids are in a little blow up pool, but they're all
right.
having fun and a barbecue, in the backyard.
Yeah. And some of us, I think, maybe of a certain generation, have a romantic idea of what our childhood was like growing up. And, we
Mm.
want a big backyard for the kids to play in. And again, to go back and talk about my Camrose home, or my childhood home in Camrose, when my mom and I drove by it just the other day, like 2 weeks ago. So that's like 50 years since we've lived in it. We drove around the back alley, and the size of that yard, it's the size of our bedroom now. Like, it's
Oh,
tiny. But as kids,
yeah.
it was, that was our, we I guess the point I'm trying to make is you don't need a lot of space for kids' imagination and for them
Yes.
to think this is my kingdom, the backyard. It does not need to
Yes.
be an acre of lawn, for the kids to love it.
I just love that point of view and what a great reminder. And I think on that note, I have kept you for a good amount of time today, Todd, and thank you for sharing a little bit of your personal life as well as your professional expertise. I know people can find you if you want Todd to speak to your association, your group, your event, your conference that you're having. I mean, every time he opens his mouth, he's just so engaging and easy to listening to. I've told you this before. I'm just a fan, but you can find him at toddhirsch.com. And you're on social, LinkedIn, Instagram. Do you have any other places you like people to find you?
LinkedIn is the primary platform on social media where I sort of live and breathe these days. That'd be the easiest way if people wanted to follow me or reach out to me. Or, yeah, I love hearing from people, and there's a way they can connect with me on the website, toddhirsch.com.
Well, thank you for joining me today, and thank you for being here and listening. And I will see you on our next episode of No Place Like Home.